I'll tell you, Adam's a news trader tomorrow. This is his kind of market.
So
Hi, Adam.
This is the perfect day to have him on. Hey, Adam.
Yeah. Adam,
Hey,
I made you the...
should be on here now.
Hey, buddy. How are you?
Hey, good to be here.
Welcome.
Yeah, waiting for your screen. Oh, your screen is up. I'm looking at mine, right? Let's see, now, where is it? I don't have your screen.
Yeah, that's okay. I'm just picking it to put up myself there. It looks like Sterling there, right?
We can see you now. Perfect.
Yeah. Do you see him, Steve? What do I need to click on to see Adam's
Yes,
there?
yes, I can
Okay.
see the screen.
I got you, buddy. So this is really an Adam Button environment because can you remember a day, Adam, where we're going to have so many different news events tomorrow? I mean, it's a hullabaloo.
It's not only the usual scheduled news. Somebody's got non-farm payroll, something else, but it's these unique events, right? Like an election, like this testimony, which is something that is very hard to quantify, and then you have the ECB on top of it all, and a couple other little things. So yeah, it's just going to be an awesome day, nonstop. I mean, the leaks are already starting on the ECB. And on Comey, we had some stuff yesterday, so it's going to be one thing after another. It's going to be a lot of fun for news traders, that's for sure.
Yeah, man, I love your desk. What a cool workstation. You would have won our contest, I think. You could have some silver dice. We had a competition for coolest workstation. I really like that black desk. So
actually working on a video myself. I built a new office in my house, and I'm actually doing the cable management underneath this desk right now, and it is like, it's just a nightmare. There's just cables everywhere, and I don't know how to do it. I would pay someone to come in and do it because I'm so intimidated by these cables running everywhere.
Yeah, well, you make a few pips, and that's a trickle-down economy there, buddy. You got to support those, electricians and carpenters. So what are you thinking, man? We have that little spike on the euro here, and people trying to bottom pick the dollar, and UK election. What are your biases for how you're going to look to trade the events? Even though I know it's very difficult to, a day ahead of time to know how the market's going to react to it.
Well, I'll start with the first one. The first question you asked is the euro, and it's interesting. I mean, it's big news that the ECB is going to cut its forecast. So if you haven't seen the news, the story out from Bloomberg was that the ECB will cut its inflation forecast for this year to 1.5% from 1.7%, cut next year and the year after, all by about the same amount. And that's incredible because you have an improving economy in Europe. So the reaction, though, is even more telling in the market. The euro fell about 50 pips on the headline, and it's come almost all the way back since then. And, every research note that I read says the same thing. It says buy the dips in the euro. And you see it more and more in the markets. Like everybody is out there waiting for some kind of dip back to like 110 or something like that to buy the euro. And we're seeing every dip is just more shallow. And now the euro gets hit with some pretty bearish news, and the dip's 50 pips, and then it gets erased in a couple hours, and it just shows me that this market is geared up to buy the euro, especially euro dollar.
Adam, sorry to interrupt. I don't know if it's Steve. I don't know if you saw it, but the buying of this dip happened because we got new rumors from ECB sources saying that forecast changes are going to be minimum, minimal. Sorry.
I see that the Reuters one. I think that might be the same thing, though. I mean, maybe it's kind of like, what do you mean by minimal? 2 ticks, 2/10, on inflation. That to me it means the same thing. So yeah, I think the bounce was already well underway before that next set of headlines. But I get that too. So maybe that's helping. Maybe people are doubting the source, but I'm not going to doubt a Bloomberg source. And if they have the numbers, and although they did say it was a rough estimate, but it's still the direction is down.
What if the prediction about downgrading inflation is solely based on expecting cheaper prices for oil?
Yeah, that's in there as well. I mean,
which is growth positive on the other hand, right?
Right, and that's in it, but you're talking 2018, 2019, like that it's impossible to downgrade it to then. If you have, $30 oil tomorrow, well, that filters through in a year or two. If you're downgrading the forecast 3 years out, that shouldn't be on oil. It's really impossible. So, it just, to me, the market reaction is really the story. So even before you got that second story, you had the euro bounce 30 pips out of the 50. And it just, to me, shows a market that wants to go higher no matter what hits it. And it makes sense. I mean, the euro is extremely depressed. The market started the year very negative, and the U.S. economy hasn't been as sparkling as most people thought it would. So it's been set up very nicely. It was held back by the French election. That's over. Europe suddenly seems unified. I mean, there's no unifier like a common enemy, and Donald Trump has made himself that, and Merkel has helped it along. So Europe suddenly seems a little bit more unified, and everything is lined up so nicely for the euro.
Yeah, so what you're saying, Adam, and I've seen this before, I've seen everything. But when a market does not give people the opportunity to buy breaks, that really shows how bullish it is. And Blake brought up a point that there's huge open interest on the 111 calls that expire Friday, and these guys are getting squeezed. Okay, let's face it, 90% of the time they collect the premium, and I think that could also be a factor in here that they're squeezed, they're underwater here. The pros wrote the calls, the amateurs bought the calls. So huge open interest, that could be a factor in what's happening here too. And very interesting point about Trump being a unifier for Europe with what, his statements at NATO and everything else. It's definitely a changing world order, isn't it?
Angela Merkel's a genius. She's survived the crisis. She's the only one. She is a political genius of our time. I mean, like her or dislike her, she's in power and she's as secure as ever, headed to another election. And by vilifying Trump and picking a fight with him, it was genius again, because she has Macron on her side. She suddenly seems to have all of Europe on her side. And all this rage that was directed at Germany, or at least some of it, is being redirected across the Atlantic. And it helps secure her position again, and her goal of unifying Europe under Germany. So it's amazing.
She's like a modern day Margaret Thatcher from Germany.
She just keeps winning, right? And you can't
This is a good point to remind people that she is a nuclear physicist, actually. So she's a smart cookie, isn't she?
And the other, almost rival to Merkel in the Brexit negotiations will be Theresa May. And she looked like an amazing politician 2 months ago. And suddenly, no matter what the result of the UK election, she appears weakened, right? Yeah,
interesting. So, EG has been kind of a favorite trade, and that too, a lot of people, like I thought, before today, EG might give us a better entry, 86 range, something like that. So do you favor, with what you've said about the euro and people voting with their wallets and buying shallow dips, and what you see happening with Theresa May, does that give you a longer term view, of a constructive view of euro pound?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a tough trade, because I have sterling up on the chart there at cable, and it just won't go down right now. I mean, it's extremely depressed as well. And the election, if you look at the polls are crazy, right? Some have an 11-point lead for the Conservatives, some have a 1-point lead for the Conservatives. But going into the 2015 election, they were even, and the Conservatives still came out with a majority. So I'm really struggling to believe that the Conservatives will somehow lose this election. I mean, they've kind of lost it in the sense that they're not going to win what they could have. And Theresa May does come out weaker for Brexit. The real trade on sterling is Brexit, right? But the short-term trade is the election result. And the election result, I think, is a Conservative majority. I mean, it's not this gigantic majority they were hoping for, but it'll be a comfortable one, I suppose. And you get some upside in something like cable on that, and probably some downside in euro sterling on the knee-jerk. But, you get right back to the status quo afterwards, and then you start to look forward to Brexit negotiations, and Theresa May suddenly looks a little bit less of a worthy combatant to Merkel, because she's stumbled here and she's not as strong at home. So then the longer term trade argues for euro sterling, but there are really no negotiation. There's no winner in Brexit negotiations unless they come to some sort of agreement to really keep the status quo.
Okay, so I get from you that, hesitation, you're kind of constructive the pound too. So
I like it.
Yeah, so I mean, and maybe it's just a dollar trade, Adam. Euro leading the way, but Kiwi, great recovery, Aussie's acting good, pound, you're constructive. Dollar index broke down. It's trying to generate a little counter trend rally here. So maybe it's just fade the dollar against anything.
I think that is the trade. In the bigger picture, that the Fed is going to hike rates, but it will probably be a dovish hike, or at least leave the door open to that. And then we get back to data. The data has been soft, inflation soft, which is the story around the world. Even though there's growth, there's no inflation. And I think that just hurts the U.S. more than anyone else because so many hikes are priced in. I think we're priced in through next year up to something like 2.25%. And I'd take the downside on that, any sort of hiccup. And you have that. Now, to touch on seasonals, you mentioned Australian dollar, very good month coming, and 2 months ahead for the Australian dollar. It's extremely depressed. The RBA this week brushed aside weak Q1 growth. We're past Q1 now. I think there is some upside in something like the Australian dollar. Cable seasonals are strong for June and July as well. Now, we're in the middle of an election, and you don't trade seasonals around an election, but there is a small tailwind there as well. Stocks are a little bit more negative, so you can extrapolate from that, maybe some more downward pressure in treasury yields and some weakness for the US dollar. And so it does set up nicely for a lot of those dollar short trades. And I think the market's been trying to say that for a little while. I mean, dollar yen does not look very good.
No, it doesn't. And what really took it down the other day, Adam, not yesterday, I think it was yesterday when we were down 100 pips. Was it news driven or what was it? I thought it might have been the fact that Comey's testimony was going to be a wider ranging testimony, not just his conversations with the president about being loyal or stopping an investigation, but possibly talking about Russia. I didn't see any news that drove that, and when there's no news that drives price action like that, it's even more bearish to me.
Yeah, it hit at that time of day that's usually like, you call it the Trump hour almost. It'll be late in North American evening that you get these leaks, it seems, almost every day, some sort of story about Trump. And there are those worries, but I also think, and it's definitely out there, there's that combination of things, but the bond market is a big one, and some stories came out about China buying bonds again and loading up in treasuries. We've seen the reversal of FX reserves there, and that fits into, I mean, if you look at the 10-year yield chart, which is a chart at all times, it's broken down.
Yeah, it looks like under 1.8 possible, but not 1.3. So I think that, in my view, in my humble opinion, that even though this is a tremendous bull move in bonds, and the TLT chart, I've been talking 130 for months now. We're not there yet, but I think that this could set up a great shorting opportunity in bonds, with yields making higher lows and prices making lower highs in the next few months. It's funny how the low was made on the last Fed hike. Maybe we're going to near the tail end of this bond rally with this Fed hike coming up here.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what happens around 2% and then 180. Those are the big levels. I mean, there's still a lot of room to run before we erase that election move higher in yield.
So that could take yen down to 105 or lower. What do you think?
I mean, if you draw the straight correlation, and this was one of the charts I had, you have 100 is if you erase that election rally. But, when you think it's just China buying bonds, well, it doesn't, that doesn't say anything about the fundamental picture. You take the 10-year yield as this, I take it as this view of fundamentals from an enormous market, extremely important market. Right. And it has everything priced in. But if China is just this outside buyer, it really only tells you something at that point about what China's thinking, not about the U.S. economy and so on and so forth. So, I'm hesitant to see that kind of downside in dollar yen.
Adam,
But
since you're
session, 1 millennium from now or so.
yeah, because it's unnecessary, right? The inflation isn't there, so let's wait for the inflation. And I think the Fed, their credibility is so strained over the last decade by over predicting growth and inflation that they have to sit back at some point and say, okay, we need to see inflation. And I think that's what we get in the middle of June is they say, all right, well, we're going to sit back and we really believe this growth and inflation is coming, but it's time to see the rubber meet the road. And if it doesn't come, we're not going to hike again. But you have a lot to unwind from the U.S. dollar and yields staying low at the same time. But it is just that we're in a deflationary world. Globalization, automation, offshoring, technology, it's tremendously deflationary. And you see it in retail every day.
You just don't see it in Toronto real estate or San Diego real estate or food prices and
that's the flip side of low interest rates, right? And you need this macroprudential regulation. But I mean, that's a long conversation because it's out of control. And it's land use planning, it's construction costs and that don't match reality at all. But I mean, that's just poor government in every sense. So that's a big trade almost everywhere. And again, speaking of government, I mean, America has a tremendous ability to borrow and invest in infrastructure right now, and that was sort of what people voted for in some sense.
Right.
Like, where is it? We're talking about public-private partnerships now, and if you're just going to build a bunch of toll roads, is that really that great for long-term growth? I don't know if you can borrow 1%, just build it yourself.
Yeah, I think that they were talking about even putting out 100-year bonds to finance infrastructure. And in this environment, they'd be bought, wouldn't they?
Yeah, why not? Right?
Looking for yield, the seek for yield right now.
But Canada's one of the countries that's doing it, and now OECD is predicting 2.8% growth this year. Canada went into huge deficits last year, and it doesn't pay off.
I'm not sure if it's in your wheelhouse, Adam, but I'm interested in your view. What do you make? What do you make about this cryptocurrency, parabolic, highly speculative environment? I think we maybe talked about Bitcoin, years ago. What's your take on this phenomena happening in crypto?
I've been getting a lot of calls lately, the media calls and that sort of things about Bitcoin. And I charted out when I get asked a lot of questions about Bitcoin, it always seems to top out.
Yeah.
Because you get this sudden spike in interest. But man, I have people, friends of mine who aren't interested in currencies or anything, calling me up and asking me about Bitcoin. So it has moved to this Main Street phenomenon, and it's not just Bitcoin; it's other cryptocurrencies like
Ethereum. Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, it has to come down to utility, right? Like, what's the point of it? I think foreign exchange costs, even physical foreign exchange costs, are moving towards almost nil. So, if you have a distrust of government, well, I mean, how big a market is that? How useful is that? Now, if you're money laundering or you're in illegal activities, there's a huge need for it. And I think that is something like 7% of global GDP or 5% of global GDP. And, that's extremely useful for those people. And I think that's really the trade. Plus, now you have ease of access and you have public falling in love with it. So if you get an ETF, and I think a lot of this latest trade is really predicated on ease of access. If you can buy Bitcoin as easily as you can buy Spider or any other ETF, then I just think a lot of people will just take a punt on it. And 3,000, why not 10,000? Because it's certainly
you can't short it. Right. I think it's very difficult to short. So that eliminates some of the selling in these vehicles.
Right. Maybe you could do it through the ETF, but it's just never going to add up to slow it down. And again, there's no fundamentals. So why not 10,000? I believe it can go there. mean, even the technology side isn't that compelling, but people want to fall in love with it, and I think that's happening right now. And that whenever you think it's running out of legs, it just gets another leg up, and it could be capital controls in China or worries about the Korean government. There's always worries about a government somewhere, and if you are knee-jerk, at least part of the population is to buy the safe asset. That might have been gold, and it still is gold, but it could also be Bitcoin, because you can store it electronically, where gold is a little bit tough to store. Then sure, why not? So it's out there, it's an asset, it's a thing now, and I think it's just a trade on the psychology of the market until proven otherwise. But anything that goes up that fast can go down.
Right. So speaking about parabolic moves and manias, Adam, that they say manias first break the people who bet against them, then break the people who bet on them. You see anything, any deterioration happening in any of the stock indexes? I noticed that the Russell, which is really a domestic-based market, U.S. companies, has way been underperforming the S&P and the Dow, and especially NASDAQ. And they seem to do better when the dollar is strong, where the multinationals do better when the dollar is weaker. Do you have any view on what's happening with S&P 2400 up here?
Well, seasonals are a bit weak headed into June, July. It's about the weakest time of the year. And you really had this whole stock market gain driven by a few stocks and tech. Yeah. And I think this last leg of that is everybody giving up on everything else and piling into tech. And then you get, Amazon over 1,000, Google over 1,000. Well, those are kind of the big targets, right? Because you're in uncharted territory. And you probably have another little blow off, even up to something like 110. You could get another 10% in those. But everything else is hollow. And once you sell those, well, what's left to buy? And those aren't trading on any kind of reasonable valuation. Yield stocks are tapped out, and
let alone retail and oils, and I mean so many weak sectors in the market for the averages to be up here. And your point is well taken about the concentration of money going into those $1,000 priced equities. Does that worry you at all? That if there's ever a sell program on those?
You had cheap borrowing still that's driving as well, and that comes down to the interest rate trade. So I come back to that because you want to see what happens at 2% or 1.8% in the 10-year yield, because you can't bet against stocks as long as they're borrowing and buying back. It's way too tough. But if you get, like I said, oil and retail are two good ones to watch because they could start to lose money. But I think home builders can still be strong, especially with rates low. So there's always going to be winners and losers.
It's a constant rotation that keeps the thing going. Yeah. Adam, you're one of my favorite guests, man. I tell you, I learn every time I talk to you. And I want to thank you for your time, and I hope that I want to encourage people to follow Adam, at least at the minimum on Twitter at FX_button or at Forex Live. Him and Greg are a great team, one of the best in the business, and I hope that you have a great summer, buddy. Maybe we could get together. I'm going to give you July off back in August and see how some of these things are playing out. Unless, knowing you'll probably be in some exotic location on vacation in August.
I got the kids now, so that's.
Oh, that's right. That's right. I mean, before you got married, I'm in Panama, I'm here, I'm there. He's all globetrotting. Now he's settling down, working with his cables under his new workstation.
Hopefully I'll have those cables sorted out in a few months. Yeah, just in case I'm accused of being not actionable, I do like cable longs into the election. I think it's going to play out well. It was going to rally anyway. Euro longs, dollar shorts, dollar yen down to 105, 106. A little bit of a longer term on the risk aversion trade. And we didn't even mention gold, but I think gold looks pretty good.
What do you think? They're mid 13s maybe?
Yeah, I mean, those lower highs, and we're just, we pushed up above some resistance yesterday. I'd like to see it consolidate above there, but that looks pretty good. So,
So
funny, and Comey himself, who knows, right? I mean, I think the trade has been to buy dips on risk aversion.
right.
And we're probably, I mean, what could he possibly say? But you don't know. And it should be a lot of fun to watch and trade.
I know. You know, it's going to be the most watched event coming from Congress, I think, since Watergate. I mean, you know, the ratings are going to be off the sky. We'll see if it's going to be interesting to see if the markets slow down a little bit while he's talking.
Yeah.
See if we get, let's have 15 minutes of silence in the markets to listen to Comey and not miss anything, huh, buddy?
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
So it's always such a pleasure, Dale. I love coming on and talking about markets and news and everything else. So real blast.
Thank you for edifying F.A.C.E, bro. Take it easy, my trading warrior brother. That's Adam Button. Everyone thank Adam. Follow him at Forex Live. Follow him at FX_Button. Great interview, buddy. Take it easy.
Thanks a lot, Dale. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you, buddy. Okay, everyone, that's a wrap. Okay, you're welcome, baby. All right, everyone. Have a great afternoon. I want to thank Steve Volge for making sure there was no dead air during the day today. I want to thank Blake for popping in. Cheers from Africa. Thank you, George. Arif, Glenn, you're welcome. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Everyone like Adam. I think the guy's great. I want to thank Stelios for dropping in. I want to thank you guys. Great calls by Armand and all your looks. And I think we have the strongest, smartest community on the net. And that's you. So most of all, don't forget, don't just count your pips, count your blessings. I count working with the F.A.C.E team and every one of you, the thousands of you that are in here every day, a blessing in my life. So we'll see you for Thursday. Good hunting. Take care, my friends.